Hello listeners, welcome to KORC's News, Music, and Civics show. I'm Wendy Byrne, your host for the Corvallis Civics Cafe. What happened at recent city meetings? What did the City Council discuss during their Monday business meeting and their Wednesday work session? What decisions did they make? That and more in today's cafe. Let's get to it. On Monday, February 2nd, prior to their regular business meeting, the City Council met in executive session. Executive sessions are closed to the public, so the only thing I can tell you about that meeting is what was published about it on the city's website, which is that they met, quote, to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions, end quote. What will that turn into? Only time will tell. Fortunately, regular Monday night meetings are open to the public. On Monday, Council President Tony Cadena was acting as mayor because Mayor Mon was in Washington, D.C., attending the winter meeting of the United States Conference of Mayors. During the unfinished business section of the meeting, the Council discussed the timing of when to update their social services policy. After discussion, there was a motion to, quote, create a more robust annual priority-setting process where the Council schedules a work session during the summer as part of its 2-year calendar to discuss priorities and then memorializes that decision with a resolution approved during a business meeting, unquote, which passed unanimously. Their next topic, that of a downtown tax increment financing district, included discussion of timing regarding a feasibility study for such a district, and timing regarding when to move the topic to a vote of we the people. Corvallis is one of the few remaining cities in Oregon where the approval of an urban renewal district requires the vote of the public. In most Oregon cities, this decision is made by a vote of the City Council. Our city charter, for now, gives that decision to local voters. Phase 1 and Phase 2 of our Charter Review Task Force have decided to not address that part of our charter until some future point after our current issue about urban renewal in our downtown is decided. On Monday night, after copious discussion, the City Council voted 8-1 to move forward with a feasibility study regarding a tax increment financing district for downtown, with the goal of moving it to the ballot this November.
Motion to authorize and direct staff to implement a feasibility study with the goal of making a decision that would allow a TIF district election in November 2026.
They discussed the idea of retaining the flexibility of moving it to May of 2027 as needed.
That I, in theory, am very much in favor of a TIF district. I am extremely skeptical that we have enough information to make that decision at this time. None of us has been educated on what the risks of a TIF district are financially, what those risks are, what are the financial consequences to the rest of the city. Will people think it's worth it? All of these things would be in the feasibility study as I understand it. I feel like waiting until May to get all of those things done properly would give us, assuming the answers come out the way we hope they do, would give us the best chance of actually being able to sell it to the voters, because we will have appeared as though we weren't rushing and we did our homework and we tried to do it as best as we could to find out what they want in downtown.
For those keeping tabs, Ward 3 Councillor Jim Moorfield was the single no vote. One thing they did not decide: where to find the $100,000 to $150,000 to pay for the feasibility study. Since Eco Northwest has, as we discovered, been on retainer to do this study since the spring of 2025, it is unlikely the city will decide to shop around for the best deal on such work, and will just go with Eco Northwest to do the job. In other news from the City Council meeting on Monday, the Council voted to add 2 new members to the Planning Commission. Next, during their time for Mayor, Councilor, and City Manager reports at the end of the meeting, Acting Mayor and Ward 9 City Councilor Tony
I'll try to be succinct.
Cadena spoke for over 12 minutes, covering a wide spectrum of items as divergent as the big rocks the council is trying to move, conversations he recently had with members of the public, 2 book reviews, and a TED Talk recommendation. If all of those given time during this section of the meeting did that, it would add 2 hours to every Monday night meeting. If you want to read more about the City Council discussion and about a tax increment financing district for downtown, check out these 2 articles in the Gazette-Times. One, written by Jackson Rickert, dated February 5th, titled Corvallis to Study Possible Redevelopment of Downtown, and the other, titled How Corvallis May Pay for a Downtown Facelift. The disturbing side note on this second article is that at the end of it there is an attached editor's note that reads, quote, "This summary article was created with AI and fact-checked by journalists," unquote. Is this where we are for local journalism? Disturbing. What is not in those articles is that tax increment financing also came up in conversations had last week by members of the Executive Committee of the Downtown Vitality Strategy Task Force and by the City Council at their work session. At their February 3rd meeting, the Downtown Vitality Strategy Task Force Executive Committee discussed their plan to issue their final report to Council this June. The task force already came before the Council to request the Council move forward with a feasibility study regarding tax increment financing for an urban renewal district in downtown. But who determines the list of projects that would be included in said urban renewal? Does the task force provide a list of projects? I thought the subcommittees of the task force were instructed to identify the problems, not the projects. Does city staff create the list based on the feedback the task force gives in its eventual report?
My question is that plan drafted completely by city staff with using this input? How does this report and that plan sort of dovetail together? I am not clear on who does the plan, what that plan looks like.
Buried in the discussions held by the Executive Committee on Tuesday, I think I heard that the City Council will make the final decision of the items on the list, but they expect the list to be created by the task force, given the input they hear from the public during their community outreach that is coming over the next 2 months. Convoluted at best. If you want your voice to be included, make sure to participate in one of the outreach events and take their survey, if you can find it. At their work session this week, staff pressed the Council to give them clear direction on items that will impact the city budget for years, if not for decades, to come. Despite the City Council policy that they make decisions at Monday night meetings, not at work sessions, they do give feedback to staff at work sessions, and there was some highly significant feedback given on February 4th. For starters, after approximately 50 minutes of discussion, they gave direction to staff to return to Council with a plan to develop the revenue to cover both the pending budget gap as well as the revenue needed to service the debt for new facilities, which amounts to an additional $18 million a year for as long as 20 years, if the Council decides to move ahead with funding the construction of 2 new buildings at the same time, i.e., the City Office Building and the Law Enforcement Building. Might that change? During the work session, Council members discussed the option of changing those plans after they have more information from staff regarding the new revenue streams. So, how about that additional $18 million in yearly revenue? How might staff pull that rabbit out of its hat? For their last agenda item at the work session, the Council members participated in an exercise to reveal the methods they think most appropriate for raising said revenue. Their top 3 choices for adding additional revenue to the city coffers are, drumroll, a general obligation bond, a payroll tax, and a personal income tax. My first impression? A general obligation bond might work, as the people of Corvallis have shown that we will pay extra for services we deem important. But A payroll tax and a personal income tax? How will that work? Why not consider a restaurant tax or a commuter tax? We will have to wait and see what staff brings back in their reports. Normally, I call this follow the money, but it has now morphed into find the money. And if you find yourself wanting more information about this discussion, I encourage you to make your way to vimeo.com/City of Corvallis and watch the work session video dated February 4th of 2026. While there, you can also use Vimeo to catch up on the other two city meetings of the week, which were the meetings of the Planning Commission and the Library Advisory Board. On the calendar for the coming week are meetings of the Economic Development Coalition on February 9th, the Historic Resources Commission on February 10th, and on February 11th, meetings of both Phase 2 of the Charter Review Task Force and the Parks and Recreation Operational Advisory Committee. You can find details about those meetings as well as participation instructions on the city website at corvallisoregon.gov/calendar. What else do I have to share with you today? I've been calling this part of the show the dessert menu, but that does not hit quite right. For now, I think I'm going to call this food for thought. I feel like I have just scratched the surface in my understanding and coverage of the city's social services policy. I don't have the time to dig in, but something says there is more here than meets the eye. If any listeners have feedback or input for me on this topic, send me an email at wendy@korcfm.com. The more you know, the more you need to know, if you know what I mean. Thanks for joining me at the Corvallis Civics Cafe. I hope the show serves you something new about local civics and inspires you to engage with our city. If you enjoy the cafe, I hope you will return for more and share it with others. Share that KORC News, Music, and Civics airs weekly on Sundays at 1 p.m. and repeats on Mondays at 5 p.m. and can be heard on FM station 105.9 or streamed online at korcfm.com. If you listen to the Civics Cafe as a podcast, share that information with someone who lives in Corvallis, or better yet, give the show a review at Apple Podcasts. Until next time, thanks for listening. I'm Wendy Byrne for KORC's News, Music, and Civics.
Good evening, counselors. My name is Christina Reckla, and I'm the Executive Director of Visit Corvallis. I'm here tonight briefly to share the state of tourism so that tourism impacts are part of conversations currently underway. As of the end of December, traditional lodging occupancy year to date was 49.8%, down 5% from last year, which is not good. In plain terms, that means that half of our hotel rooms are sitting empty on an average night. For context, a healthy and stable destination typically sees average hotel occupancy closer to low to mid 60% range over the course of a year. Since opening the Courtyard by Marriott and given multiple market factors, Corvallis as a destination has not been able to exceed 60% in any one year. The 60% level allows hotels to operate sustainably and consistently generate transient lodging tax revenue. Hotels collect lodging only when rooms are occupied. When rooms are empty, no tax is collected. In Corvallis, 70% of the transient lodging tax goes back into the city's general fund. 30% supports tourism. When tourism occupancy and revenues decline, both the city and tourism are impacted.